The screen flickered to life, displaying a star map unlike anything ever seen before, a vast, glittering expanse of conquered worlds, each one marked with the sigil of the Galactic Dominion. For 1,000 years they had ruled unchallenged, their empire stretching across the void, their laws absolute. No species had ever broken free. None had even dared. Until now. The camera zoomed in on a single, unremarkable star system, Sol. A quarantine beacon pulsed ominously around it, a warning to all who approached. Containment zone. Do not enter. Do not engage. And for centuries the galaxy obeyed. The humans inside were considered volatile, unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed into the greater cosmos. The Dominion had seen what they were capable of: wars fought over invisible lines, weapons that split atoms, engines that clawed at the fabric of space itself. No, it was safer to keep them locked away. But then, the impossible happened. A distress signal tore through the comnet, shattering the silence of the High Council chambers. The Grand Overseer, a being of ancient wisdom and unshakable composure, stiffened as the message played. It was a human voice, calm, measured, and utterly terrifying in its simplicity. This is Captain Ryland of the Terran vessel Odyssey. Containment has failed. We're coming out. Silence. Then chaos. Advisors shouted, data screens exploded with frantic reports. The containment field, the one that had held for generations, was breached. Not by force, not by some grand assault, but by something far worse. Ingenuity. The humans hadn't blasted their way free. They had slipped through like shadows through a crack. And now they were loose in the galaxy. The Overseer's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. This wasn't supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to be contained, controlled, forgotten. But they had done the one thing no species in Dominion history had ever managed: they had escaped their cage. And worse, they didn't seem afraid. The camera cut to the bridge of the Odyssey, where a single figure stood at the helm, staring into the infinite black. The captain's face was unreadable, but in their eyes burned something the galaxy hadn't seen in a long, long time. Hope. And with it, a promise, unspoken but deafening in its silence. We're not asking for permission anymore. The screen faded to black. The story was just beginning. The bridge of the Odyssey hummed with a quiet tension, the kind that settled deep in the bones of every crew member standing at their stations. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched unnaturally, warped by the ship's experimental drive, the very thing that had torn them free from the Dominion's grip. Captain Ryland didn't turn from the screen, fingers resting lightly on the command console. They could still feel the ghost of the containment field's resistance, the way space itself had fought to keep them locked away. But humanity had never been good at staying where they were put. Behind them, the first officer let out a slow breath. "We're clear," they said, voice tight with disbelief. "No pursuit. No alarms. Just open space." Ryland didn't answer right away. That was the unsettling part. No blaring warnings, no fleet of Dominion warships bearing down on them. Just silence. The kind of silence that made the back of the neck prickle. The Dominion didn't let things go. Ever. A soft chime broke the quiet. The navigator's hands flew over the holo display, pulling up a star chart, one they'd only ever seen in smuggled data fragments before now. "Closest inhabited system is Xeria," they said. "Former client species of the Dominion. If the intel's right, they might not be friendly." Ryland finally turned, eyes scanning the faces of the crew. Some were young, barely out of training when the Odyssey had made its desperate run. Others were veterans, men and women who remembered the last time the Dominion had visited Sol, the silent ships in the sky, the way entire cities had gone dark under the weight of their gaze. The scars ran deep. "Friendly or not, we don't have a choice," Ryland said quietly. "We're not just running. We're sending a message." The words hung in the air. They all knew what that meant. The Dominion had spent centuries telling the galaxy that humans were monsters, that Sol was a prison for a reason. But the Odyssey wasn't some weaponized terror. It was a ship of explorers, scientists, engineers, people who had looked at the stars and refused to accept that they were forbidden. The comms officer suddenly stiffened. "Captain, we're being hailed." Silence. Then a voice crackled over the speakers, smooth, alien, and dripping with something that wasn't quite amusement. Terran vessel. "You are in violation of Dominion Edict 117 Alpha. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding." Ryland's jaw tightened. They'd known this would come. But the voice wasn't Dominion. The accent was wrong, the cadence too sharp. Whoever this was, they weren't the Empire's enforcers. They were something else. The first officer's hand hovered over the weapons panel, but Ryland shook their head slightly. Not yet. Leaning forward, they opened the ship-wide channel. This is Captain Ryland of the Odyssey. We don't recognize Dominion authority. And we're not stopping. Pause. Then the voice returned, softer now, almost curious. Asterisk. You really think you can run? Asterisk. Ryland smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Who said anything about running? The transmission cut out abruptly. Outside, the stars shimmered, not from the warp drive, but from the sudden appearance of 3 sleek, angular ships, their hulls marked with insignias none of them recognized. Not Dominion. Not anything on record. The navigator sucked in a sharp breath. They've got weapons locked. Ryland didn't flinch. Evasive pattern Delta. And get me everything we have on who the hell these people are. Somewhere in the back of their mind, a quiet voice whispered that this was exactly what the Dominion had feared. Not that humans would escape, but that they'd fight back. The Odyssey's engines roared to life as the alien ships surged forward. And the real game began. The Odyssey shuddered as the first plasma volley streaked past its hull, close enough that the heat bled through the external sensors like a warning. The alien ships moved unlike anything in Dominion records, fluid, unpredictable, as if they weren't just flying through space but bending it to their will. Ryland gripped the command console, knuckles white. Evasive maneuvers aren't working, they muttered. They're anticipating us. The first officer's voice was tight. They're toying with us. A second blast rocked the ship and the lights flickered. Red emergency panels flared to life, casting the bridge in a bloody glow. Ryland's mind raced. This wasn't just a patrol. This was a trap. And they'd walked right into it. The comms officer suddenly swore under their breath. Captain, we're being scanned. Deep scan. They're not just looking at our systems. They're looking for something. Ryland's blood ran cold. The Dominion had always been obsessed with containment, with control. But these ships, whoever they were, weren't here to drag them back. They were here to study them. Shut it down, Ryland snapped. Full countermeasures. Now. The engineer's hands flew across the controls. If we overload the dampeners, we'll blind ourselves too. Do it. A pulse of raw energy flared from the Odyssey's core, a last-ditch burst of electromagnetic static that should have fried any scanning tech within range. For a heartbeat, the alien ships faltered, their movements stuttering like a predator momentarily blinded. It was all the opening they needed. Jump coordinates locked, the navigator barked. But Captain, we don't know where this leads. The charts are blank. Ryland didn't hesitate. Punch it. The Odyssey's warp drive screamed as it tore a hole in reality, the stars outside stretching into jagged lines before snapping into darkness. For a terrifying moment there was nothing. No sound, no light, just the crushing weight of the unknown pressing in on all sides. Then space reasserted itself with a violent shudder, and the view screen flared back to life. The crew froze. They weren't in any known system. No stars, no planets, just an endless, yawning void, broken only by a single impossible structure floating in the black. It was massive, ancient, its surface etched with markings that made the eyes ache just to look at. And at its center, a pulse of light flickered like a heartbeat. The first officer's voice was barely a whisper. What the hell is that? Ryland didn't have an answer. But one thing was clear, this wasn't Dominion tech. This was something older. Something worse. A new alert blared across the bridge. The engineer's face went pale. Captain, we're not alone. On the scanner, dozens of signatures flared to life. Not just the alien ships that had chased them, but others. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. All converging on their position. And at the center of it all, the structure's pulse quickened as if waking up. Ryland's hand hovered over the weapons panel. They had one shot. One chance to turn the tide before whatever was out there decided humanity's fate for them. The crew braced. The universe held its breath. And then, the Odyssey's hull groaned under some unseen pressure as the ancient structure's pulse quickened, each throb sending visible ripples through space itself. Ryland's breath caught in their throat. They'd seen Dominion tech, seen alien wonders, but this was something else. This felt alive. Scanners are going haywire, the engineer barked, fingers flying across flickering displays. That thing? It's emitting some kind of signal. And whatever's out there, they gestured wildly at the swarm of ships now surrounding them. They're responding to it. A new voice crackled over the comms, not the smooth, mocking tone from before, but something rougher, urgent. Asterisk human vessel, power down immediately. You do not understand what you've awakened. Asterisk. Ryland exchanged glances with the first officer. This wasn't a Dominion ally. This was fear. Real, raw fear in an alien voice. Then the structure moved. Not physically, but space around it twisted, warping like liquid as a beam of impossible light lanced out, not at the Odyssey but at the nearest alien ship. The vessel didn't explode. It unraveled, its hull peeling back layer by layer like an onion, revealing glowing inner workings before disintegrating into glittering dust. A collective gasp echoed across the bridge. The engineers' hands shook. Whatever that was, it just deconstructed them at the atomic level. The comms erupted with panicked transmissions in a dozen alien tongues, ships scattering in sudden chaos. But the Odyssey couldn't move. The warp drive was still spooling, still damaged from their desperate jump. Ryland's mind raced. They'd thought they were escaping the Dominion. They'd thought they were the hunters. But now, staring at this ancient horror, a terrible realization settled in their gut. The Dominion hadn't contained humanity to protect the galaxy from them. They'd contained humanity to protect them from the galaxy. The first officer's voice was hollow. "Captain, we need to run." But where? The structure's pulse was accelerating now, the light at its core burning brighter. The remaining alien ships were forming some kind of defensive pattern, weapons charging, not aimed at the Odyssey but at the monstrosity before them. A new alert screamed through the bridge. The engineer's face went ashen. "The structure, it's scanning us again. Different this time. It's focusing on our warp signature." Ryland's blood turned to ice. They'd used human FTL tech to get here. And whatever this thing was, it recognized it. The light at the structure's core flared violently. And changed color. From cold blue to burning crimson. The alien voice on the comms became a scream. "IT remembers." Then space tore open. The Odyssey lurched violently as space itself split apart before them. Ryland gripped the command console, their stomach dropping as the fabric of reality peeled back like torn paper. Through the rift, something moved, something vast, ancient, and hungry. Full reverse thrust. Ryland shouted, but the engineer was already slamming controls. "It's not responding. We're being pulled in." The crimson light from the structure pulsed faster now, syncing with the Odyssey's own struggling warp drive in a way that couldn't be coincidence. The alien ships were in full retreat, their formations breaking apart as the rift expanded. One of them transmitted a final desperate warning. It was never about control, it was about survival. "You woke the Devourer." Then the screaming transmission cut off as the nearest alien ship was swallowed by the growing void. Ryland's mind raced. Every instinct screamed to fight, to run, but the truth was clicking into place. The Dominion's containment. The fear in the aliens' voices. The way this thing reacted to human technology. "Captain?" The first officer pointed at the main screen. The rift wasn't just growing, it was reaching for them with tendrils of distorted space. A wild idea struck Ryland. "Override the safeties on the warp core. I want a full overload in 30 seconds. The crew stared. The engineer's face went pale. "That'll tear us apart." "Maybe," Ryland said, eyes locked on the screen. "Or maybe it'll do to that thing what our first jump did to the containment field." Understanding dawned on the first officer's face. The Dominion had kept humanity contained because human FTL didn't just travel through space. It changed it. And whatever this Devourer was, it recognized that power. The engineer's hands flew across the controls. Overload initiated. 25 seconds to detonation. The Odyssey shuddered as the rift's pull intensified. Consoles sparked, alarms wailed, and the air smelled of burning metal. Ryland gripped their chair, watching as the Devourer's form became clearer through the rift. Not a ship, not a structure, but something vast and shapeless, a darkness that made the eyes hurt to look at. 15 seconds. The first officer suddenly grabbed Ryland's arm. "We can't outrun the blast radius." Ryland met their gaze. "I know." A strange calm settled over the bridge. This was it. Not just for them but maybe for every species that had feared humanity's potential. 5 seconds. The Devourer lunged. And the Odyssey's warp core exploded in a burst of light that didn't just illuminate space, but rewrote it. The last thing Ryland saw was the rift collapsing in on itself, the Devourer's form twisting and screaming as the very laws of physics reasserted themselves in a wave of brilliant gold. Then, darkness. Silence. A beep. Ryland's eyes fluttered open to a haze of smoke and flickering emergency lights. They were alive. The bridge was battered but intact. And through the cracked viewport, stars. Normal, steady stars. No rift. No devourer. No alien fleet. Just quiet, open space. The first officer coughed beside them. Did we just? A new alert chimed. The comms officer, blood trickling from their forehead, gasped. Captain. We're receiving a transmission. It's human. The speaker crackled to life with a voice no one had heard in centuries. A voice from home. This is Earth Defense Fleet Vessel Phoenix. To the Odyssey *, welcome back. You've got a hell of a story to tell. Ryland slumped back in their chair, laughter bubbling up from somewhere deep and raw. They'd set out to escape containment, to prove humanity's worth. Instead, they'd just saved the galaxy from the very thing the Dominion had been hiding from. And now the real work began. The Odyssey limped into Earth's orbit on borrowed power, her scorched hull telling a story that no report could ever capture. Ryland stood at the viewport, staring down at the blue-green planet below. Home, but not the home they remembered. Cities glittered where there had been ruins, orbital platforms dotted the space lanes, and a small armada of sleek warships stood guard. The last time they'd seen Earth, it had been a prison. Now it was a fortress. The comm crackled again. Odyssey, you're cleared for docking at Armstrong Station. Medical teams are standing by. There was a pause, then the voice softened. And Captain? Welcome home. Ryland let out a breath they didn't realize they'd been holding. Around them, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. Some wept openly. Others just stared as if waiting for the dream to shatter. The first officer squeezed Ryland's shoulder. We made it. But as the docking clamps secured the battered ship, Ryland knew the real journey was just beginning. Armstrong Station buzzed with activity, a far cry from the hushed, fearful world they'd left behind. Humans and aliens, actual aliens, moved through the corridors together. A tall, gray-skinned being with 4 arms nodded respectfully as Ryland passed. A group of engineers, human and otherwise, huddled around a holographic display arguing in a mix of languages. The air smelled of ozone and something spicy, unfamiliar. The station commander, a grizzled woman with cybernetic implants curling around one eye, greeted them personally. Captain Ryland. You and your crew just rewrote history. She handed them a data pad. Earth broke containment 83 years ago. We've been building, learning, preparing, but we needed what you just did. Proof that we weren't the monsters they claimed. Ryland scanned the reports. The Dominion was fracturing. Species they'd oppressed were rising up. And the Devourer. It's really gone? The commander's smile didn't reach her eyes. That one is. But the universe is old, Captain. And hungry. She gestured to the viewport, where Earth hung serene against the black. But now they know we bite back. Over the next weeks, the story unfolded. The Dominion had indeed been protecting lesser species from the truth. The Devourers were cosmic predators, ancient machines that fed on civilizations once they reached a certain technological threshold. The Dominion's solution? Control. Suppression. Keeping younger races like humanity in cages, believing it was for their own good. But humanity had never been good at staying caged. Ryland stood on the station's observation deck months later, watching the first joint fleet, human and alien alike, depart for Dominion space. Not for war but for answers. The first officer joined them, handing over a steaming mug. Think they're ready for us out there? Ryland sipped the coffee, real coffee, not the recycled sludge they'd lived on for years, and smiled. Doesn't matter if they are. We're coming anyway. Below them, Earth turned peacefully in the sunlight, no longer a prisoner, no longer afraid. Just one world among many, finally taking its place in the stars. And somewhere in the dark between galaxies, if something ancient and hungry stirred, well, let it come. The Odyssey's battered hull gleamed under Earth's orbital repair beams as Ryland stepped onto the observation deck one final time. The scars of their journey would never fully fade, not from the ship's metal bones, not from their souls. Below, the blue marble of Earth spun peacefully, its night side now dotted with more lights than Ryland remembered from childhood. Not just the old familiar constellations of cities, but new patterns, orbital habitats, lunar colonies, the glittering dance of 100 ships moving between worlds. The door hissed open behind them. The first officer leaned against the frame, holding 2 glasses of something amber that caught the sunlight. They're waiting for you downstairs, they said, offering 1 glass. The council wants to hear your testimony before the final vote. Ryland took the drink, letting the warmth seep into their fingers. They already know what happened out there. Doesn't matter. The first officer joined them at the viewport. People need to hear it from you. Need to see the face of the ones who proved we're more than what the Dominion said we were. They drank in silence for a moment, watching a formation of sleek new fighters human-designed but incorporating alien tech streak past the station. You ever wonder, the first officer said quietly, if we did the right thing? Breaking containment? Waking whatever that thing was. Ryland studied their reflection in the glass, superimposed over the vastness of Earth. Saw the new lines around their eyes, the gray hairs that hadn't been there when they'd left. No, they said finally. The Dominion was wrong. Not about the danger, but about the solution. You don't protect children by locking them in a basement forever. A chime sounded. The vote was beginning. Down in the council chamber, representatives from a dozen species sat in a circle. Humans, yes, but also the four-armed Xerians. The crystalline HSSK, others Ryland didn't recognize. The air hummed with translation devices. At the center, a hologram showed the known galaxy, with Dominion space highlighted in ominous red. When Ryland spoke, their voice didn't shake. The Devourer is gone. But the universe is old. There will be others. The Dominion's way was to hide, to control, to keep civilizations small and afraid. They looked around the circle, meeting each alien gaze in turn. We propose something different. Not a cage but a warning system. Not containment but preparation. A pact, that when the next hunger comes, we face it together. The vote took 3 days. When the results came in, Ryland was back on the Odyssey's bridge, running final checks on her rebuilt systems. The first officer burst in, waving a data pad. It's unanimous. They're calling it the Sentinel Pact. Every species in the quadrant is signing on. Ryland allowed themselves a small smile. Outside the viewport, the first Sentinel station was already under construction. Not a prison, but a watchtower. A beacon. The comm crackled. Odyssey, this is traffic control. Your departure window is open. Godspeed. As the engines hummed to life, Ryland ran a hand along the command console. The ship had carried them through hell and back. Now it would carry them forward again. Set course for the rim, they said. Let's see what else is out there. And as the stars stretched into lines ahead of them, Earth's final transmission followed them into the dark. Remember, you're not escaping anymore. You're coming home. The Odyssey leapt forward into the waiting universe. Behind them, 1,000 new lights sparked to life across the solar system, not warning beacons but welcome signs. The message was clear. Humanity was home. And the galaxy would never be the same.